Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 2026 Nissan Sentra. Now, the one you're looking at here is the SR, but there are multiple trims available. And in this video, we're going to talk about two of them. And I'm going to take you through the details, all the information we have on hand right now. And from this point forward, you are looking at an all-new exterior design. And wait till I show you the interior. All right, let's talk about SR styling because this is unique to the brand. And the SR essentially has different paintwork and a little bit of different wheel design, bodywork in general. Starting from the front, let's talk about the front end design because this is all black. This is essentially the same fascia as all the other ones, but this is all black down here, making it look more manly. And then you have the SR here, once again, manly stuff right there. And that matches this paint as well, which is quite an orange. Now what you're seeing here is a 18-inch wheel that is specific to this car. No other one has it. And then if you look over to the side, you can see that black section down there. Once again, exclusive to the SR. And that matches the blacked out roof as well. And because of that, the roof design truly makes this car look unique compared to the other ones because they don't have this available. This color, this roof design, in terms of paint, specific to this car. And there's more because you got this. What is an SR without a spoiler? So you have that back here. You have additional black trim, including in this area as well. It's definitely darker. And then this lower section here that has a little bit more of a pronounced exhaust right there. You also have this right here, which gives you the impression of having ground effect. I don't know whether or not it's functional, but it certainly looks like it is. The Nissan Sentra is one of the most important vehicles for Nissan, and that is because this vehicle has been with them in the United States for around 43 years. Last year in 2024, they sold well over 160,000 of these. So it's still a hot seller for them. And keep in mind, they have gotten rid of and or will be getting rid of a majority of their sedans. This is going to be it, versus gone. So yeah, Maxima, way gone. This is it, pretty much. Yes, the Ultima's here, but for how long? The bottom line is that the big question here, considering how many they've been built, and there's been millions, can this car save Nissan? You may recognize this 149 horsepower 2-liter engine, and that is because it's basically the same as before. Puts out 146 pound-feet of torque, and it's tied to a continuously variable transmission that feeds the front wheels. Now, the good news is that Nissan has updated that CVT to make it a little bit more responsive, smoother. But here's another important point. The vehicle itself has different settings, including a sports setting, and you put it into a sports setting, then you have a little bit more rock and roll when you're tapping on the accelerator. It's just a little bit more sensitive, making that respond a little bit quicker. Now you may have noticed there's an orange color to the seats for the SR, and it does sort of match the energetic ember. That's the name of the orange paint they have on the outside of the car. But Nissan has a tendency to use orange or sometimes even red to show sporty character, which they do here. In addition, with the interior on the SR, you can really see the ambient lighting, and this goes throughout the vehicle, so there's a bunch of spots where it has this, but also the stitching that they have here, they definitely add that orange there. I'm not sure if they call it an energetic ember on the inside, but people like to call things different names. You still have the very slashy setup here. Up on the dash, you're going to see that in other vehicles. But more importantly, one of the things Nissan really stressed, and I get it, is that they wanted to add a lot of value to this vehicle. Meaning that the seat design and the seat comfort, standard zero gravity seats. And I'm very happy about that. An interesting thing is that this seat, to me, feels a little bit more comfortable than one of the other seats I recently sampled. And it could be just the way that seat is designed, but my big butt does fit actually quite nicely here. A couple things I wanted to point out with this interior, other than the stitching and the fact that it's dark, that's pretty much it. It's very similar to the other Nissan that we're going to be showing you in a little bit later, and this one does have the optional sunroof as well. There are other options available, but there are things that come standard on the SR, including the two 12.3-inch screens that you can see here. And That's about it on the inside. So it's got the unique looking interior and it's got these screens standard, but there's really nothing else that differentiates it from the other vehicles in terms of overall performance, but it does have those really sharp looking wheels. One other cool part of the 2026 Nissan Sentra is its dancing lights. Actually, it's kind of cool. So this car actually recognizes you when you're walking away and you're walking to it, and it actually does a little bit of a light greeting. Couple things I wanted to quickly mention, and that is, you may have heard of SUVs are taking over the world. Everybody's going SUV. Well, that's not really true if you think about the competition that the Sentra has to deal with, and that comes directly from Toyota, and it comes from Honda, and it comes from Kia and Hyundai and Mazda, and all of them build quality sedans that compete directly with this car, and they sell millions of them. So Nissan is in the thick of it. And once again, this is one of their better selling vehicles. So it's one of the many reasons why it's so important. Will people continue to buy sedans? Will they continue to buy small cars, which, even though this thing is enormous compared to the original Sentra, is still considered a small car? Visually, the SL is actually really different than the SR. And part of that has to do with the paint scheme, which we can start with in the front. And as you can tell, very different, and that's because they have this color matched section down here, taking the mass of the black that you had with the SR and changing it and making it look, in my mind, a little bit more sophisticated and perhaps a little less chaotic than the SR. It's a personal opinion. I'm curious to what you guys think. But you also have unique colors and unique wheels with this vehicle, which we're going to have a look at. This vehicle is packed with everything. But let's start with a new color for Sentra, and that is Imperial Bronze. Now, bespoke wheels on this vehicle are 17-inch, and they are painted gray. But one of the things you're going to notice about the paint job on the side is that, unlike the SR, this one has color match right here. So this is all black on the SR, this section here, but it's body color matched throughout. Now, there is another thing to point out, and that is the black mirrors. And because this car comes with everything, it also comes standard with this, a moonroof. But there's more, and that is all inside. So let's have a seat on these, and this is it, tailor fit, quilted leather, synthetic leather seats. Now, you may have heard a lot of people talk about zero gravity seats, and you may be wondering what that is. That is a fancy word for cool foam, or better foam perhaps, because it's the foam that's in here that's really all about the whole zero gravity thing. And Nissan uses it quite a lot to describe their vehicles. So the seating is actually very comfortable. My booty feels very good. But there's a couple things that I wanted to point out here. First of all, once again, every feature that you can get in other vehicles as an option is pretty much packed in here with the SL. And that includes two 12.3-inch screens. And I'm going to see if, there we go. Now you can see them. Actually, it's very clear displays. Credit to Nissan on that. Now, you may be wondering, is this standard across the board? No, it's not, because normally on the S base model, that's a 7-inch screen for driver information, but you still have the 12.3-inch screen here. That is actually pretty cool considering how much you're getting in the car, and I keep stressing that. This is a car that gives you a ton of value in terms of features packed into the car, even from the standard point of view, all the way up to the fully loaded one, which once again has the sunroof. These seats are bespoke. This is the only vehicle that has these seats. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but it has this cool little thing here. I have no idea what this means, if anything, but it's kind of a cool look to it. Maybe the slashing thing kind of looks like the grille of the car, because that's what they're going for, slashy stuff. Look at that, they got slashy stuff over here. Slashy. But then they have this relatively soft touch material here. I mean, it's probably a rubber plastic, but they do have stitching. So it feels a little bit more premium. And one thing that makes me very, very happy is that they have a padded section up here with soft touch material. So if the window's open, you put your arm there, it's not hard plastic. I know it's nitpicking, but it's something that I have an issue with. Steering wheel design, I think, is super cool, very similar to what we're seeing on some modern Nissan products, including the new Leaf and the Aria as well. So a very similar type of design here. Hard buttons, thank you very much for these on the steering wheel. That is great to have. But I wanted to point out something that maybe some of you guys might have a minor issue with, and that is the fact that these are not buttons. This is essentially a screen. It's a haptic setup here. Fortunately, it's just for heating, air conditioning, and heated seats. So, it's not that bad. But at least here, with your sound control, camera control, that's all hard buttons too, including this knob and volume on-off. That's a button. So having all of this is great. And then 2 USB-Cs up front and start-stop button here. Thank you very much, Nissan, for at least having a gear lever as opposed to buttons. I do prefer this. Obviously, electric parking brake, that's kind of normal. And then your driving modes, and it's all the way over here in terms of the display. But here's your standard, here's eco, and then sport. That's it, 3 modes. Now, according to Nissan, the one thing about the sport mode is that it makes things a little bit jazzier. So acceleration, it's a little bit more sensitive to input, and also changes around the way the steering feels as well. It won't adjust the suspension or do anything like that, nor do you get more power out of the vehicle, so to speak. But it does make things a little bit more playful, according to them. Now, let's talk about overall seating comfort, because I can talk about that. It's not bad. This seat has a very active lumbar support, so whoever was in here was either pregnant or had some issues with their lower back. There we go, much better. Wow, that is a serious lumbar support. By the way, there are vehicles out there that don't have that, so it's nice to have. But the seat itself is relatively comfortable. The seat bottom is very comfortable. And yes, it does look to me like a more premium version of what a Nissan would normally offer, especially when you look at these seats. These look like something that Genesis would do, frankly. And I'm not trying to butter you up about this. I'm just telling you what my honest opinions are about the interior of this vehicle. Now, let's quickly talk about the back seat. Okay, now keep in mind, I'm about 6'1", I'm a big boy, so this seat is as far back as it can go. I wanted to point that out first. I wear size 13 boots, so I have to push them under the seats that are in front of me, which, wow, they went right under with no problem. Look at that. Yeah, what's up with that? And I have a little tiny bit of knee room. So I'm going to shut the door. And, wow, okay, fair enough. The headroom back here is very good. I'm able to look straight up at the ceiling, so even if I was wearing one of Roman's wigs, it wouldn't be scraping against the roof, unless I really pushed it. But yeah, so headroom is good, legroom is impressive for what it is. One thing I want to point out, and that's over here. You have USB-C, one of them, which is something, but there's no rear vent. I'm kind of bummed about that, but it's a relatively small car. So I get it, you can, have the air come up and over, but I would like to see a rear vent. There are some competitors that have that. Another thing I wanted to point out that's very interesting, check out the back of these seats. It's kind of a purple-blue color here, and it kind of goes throughout the cockpit that you have this color in little splashes here and there, but this is a much deeper one. It's an interesting choice, something I wasn't expecting. And let's see what we got here. Big surprise, but that's a good thing to have. Cup holders, and you have a 60-40 split rear seat. Oh, let me show you the trunk. There's something special going on there. Okay, it's not exactly dead center, so you have to go slightly off kilter to find the pad to open this. So it's kind of under the second S, but there it is. See that right there? Right there, yeah. So, why is the trunk a big deal? Well, first of all, Sentra's always had a very good sized trunk, but this one they did something interesting. They wanted to make this a more usable trunk for regular people like you and I. Meaning, they dropped it about 50 millimeters lower, the opening, than the previous Sentra. And then they opened this section even wider. So it's easier to put in things like a stroller, Roman's walker, Andre's extra stroller for his 5th kid. All that stuff can easily go back here. And there's a ton of space for that. So I'll give them a lot of credit because it's, You definitely can tell. Like, okay, here we go. Here's my kneecap here, and this is the opening. That gives you an idea of how much lower they made it, which is kind of cool. One more thing, let's open this up. Aha! So that is a tire repair kit they got there. All right, so something else I want to point out, and that's the fact that this is basically using the same platform as before. So it's the previous model's platform, meaning that the wheelbase is about the same, and the overall size of the vehicle isn't really that much bigger than before. It just looks it partly because of this rear design. So they gave it a bit of a fastback look going back here all the way to that light lip in the trunk. And they also made it look like the rear is wider by jutting out this line and giving it a little bit more, I don't know, of a sensual design perhaps back here, bringing it out. And then in the back, I do like the way the SL looks. Once again, they're not using a ton of extra black paint. They just have this lower section here, which is essentially just part of the rear bumper. I believe this is all one piece. It might not be, but it's close enough. And all of this, instead of having all that extra black splash, no spoiler on the back, very simple. And I really do like the fact that they gave it this design with this LED that cuts almost all the way across. That is pretty cool as well. So overall, it is based on the same bones, but they certainly did freshen up that design even on the SL. Additional information in terms of EPA numbers, unfortunately not quite available yet, but we'll hopefully get them soon. Also, this vehicle will be available, according to Nissan, in the fall of 2025. So stay tuned for more. Thanks for joining me. We've come a long way from clay molds and wooden blocks with knives and also sketches and also computer-aided basic design. We've gone up levels and levels and levels. And now we're at a point to where we're using virtual reality mixed in with kind of real reality to create these modern cars. And we're at a facility right now that's going to allow me to do just that. Look at a vehicle using these VR goggles, and I'm being anointed with super nerdum, which is awesome because you guys know that I'm usually, ooh, look at the cameraman, look at the stuff that you have on. So this is really cool because this is going to allow me an opportunity to look at the vehicle 3D, but in addition, I'm going to be able to walk around the car using the natural light that's here. It's going to bounce off of it as if it's right there in front of me in reality. So right now I'm standing at the very front of the car, and it does look like it is pretty much reality when you stare at it. And the closer you get, the more details pop out, kind of like the way your eye works. But the big difference here is that when you're moving around, suddenly you're in the Matrix and you expect Keanu Reeves to pop out and say, "What's up?" So one of the things I wanted to point out is that we recently looked at the Nissan Sentra, not this model though. This is not the SR. This is the SV, that's the one. Cool, didn't get to see an SV before, so here it is. And the big difference here is that even though the paint scheme is very similar, it's not exactly the same. The one we saw was bright orange. So I'm able to look at this and say, okay, different color. You can definitely see the color. But when I move, there's a little bit of a shimmer, but then it stops when I look directly at something and I go in, and seriously, it looks like I can reach out and touch steel. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here at Nissan Design Studio 6. That's spelled S-I-X, not 6, like Motel 6. And I'm here with Danielle. And can you tell us what you do for Nissan? I mean, this is your space.
Yes, thank you for coming. So Nissan Studio 6, it's basically, the story was, it's based off of the sixth sense of a designer. What is a sixth sense? It's creativity. We ingest tons of stuff. LA is an international terminal of talent and culture. So essentially we absorb that, we go to sleep, we wake up, and we just start creating. So my main mission here is to kind of foster an area of multidisciplinary talent. So we have, like our newest hire is an entertainment designer. She does character design for video games and such for. How does that pertain to us? Is basically when we're building the character, the nucleus of the next generation icon vehicle, we need to understand who that person is, and we kind of give them a little bit of our unique persona. And that little personality is what we foster all the way through the design process.
So let's work our way around. So once again, this is a shimmering effect as I walk around it, which is interesting. All right. I'm gonna make my way to this side. There is some discoloration to the tires where they look like they're white walls, which is actually kind of cool. Moving my head around. Oh, interesting. There's my, I'm looking at myself, looking. If I keep doing this long enough, I might go back in time. All right, let's look at the inside of the car. That's really cool. So from here, I can actually look inside the vehicle, and here's the cool part. Ready, guys? Okay, without opening the door, because there's no door, I'm going to stick my head in and just move over a little bit. I'm already inside. Now, normally these type of design spaces are massive.
Yes.
And you have several, if not hundreds, of people that are working design.
Yes.
This is scaled way down.
Yes.
Can you explain how?
Yes. So that's very important. We're a fully digital studio. And what you experienced earlier, the XR, that is something that we definitely dive into and we use that. So we streamline the process. A typical, a traditional process would be you do some sketching like so, you make a 3D model, you make clay models this small, full-scale clay models, and then you narrow down. Essentially what we're doing is that we're compressing all of that into the digital realm. We're not in the physical realm anymore. So our studio shrinks about 99%.
Right.
Also just, we can just be a little bit more agile. So we definitely, we experiment with having different disciplines of interns, contract designers, just so we can learn from them, but also it gives us a unique spin to it. So having said that, we also learn a little bit from different industries on how they streamline their process. And one of the key things is just simple. We think of it, and within 24 hours, we want to see something in our hand, or like what you saw earlier, kind of in your hand.
Virtually in your hand.
Yeah.
This is super cool. Okay, so how would this benefit a designer? And how is Nissan benefiting from this, right? And I think there's a very simple answer. You're able to take somebody and put them into an immersive experience into this brand new vehicle that you're developing. It doesn't necessarily have to be in full production. It could be partially there. And as such, you want them to sit inside and look around and go, okay, I'm looking at these details, and maybe the vent controls could be moved somewhere else, or perhaps this could be changed, or something along those lines. And by doing that, you minimize the amount of time that goes into actually designing the vehicle, and you give everybody a similar experience. That way, instead of it just being a small corporate entity that says, this is what we want, you now have a group where it's like, hey, boss, you can look at this, and do you like this? Oh, everybody sees the same thing as opposed to interpreting what they see two-dimensionally. Now, I've talked to some of your guys, and it's an interesting facility because you have a mix of talent, as you were saying.
Yes.
And so they're coming from different disciplines. And one of the things that I really did notice is the fact that they're all very keen on this new tech, which essentially is taking a design, making a full-size 3D model, one that you can interact with visually. Obviously not physically, we're not quite there yet, but that you can transfer also all over the world. So you can send it to Tokyo, to London, wherever you need to send it in terms of getting the boss's approval, getting other people's approval, and also making changes and doing it almost real time, really.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and imagine, like today we were looking at the Sentra. So imagine we're going through a minor change. We need to change the front bumper and so on. We can essentially put 3 models there, designer A, designer B, designer C, evaluate them. Okay, for America, turn on the lights for America, see all the shading. Because if you go to New York City, if you see the skyscrapers, the light leaks like this, it's very top heavy. So
Right.
The cars feel a little more stout, a little bit more imperial-like. And you go to Los Angeles and the horizon is very, very low, but then you have rocky, and you get this beautiful, clean, pebble-like reflection around it. So you go to Japan, it's 15% brighter, it's a little bit more overcast. So you have to evaluate these cars very diligently, and then this expedites that. And it also gives our stakeholders the ability to see these visions in their accurate finishing quality.
So there's the 2026 Nissan Sentra in virtual reality, but having, when I look at it a long period of time, it just looks like it's the actual car in front of me. How extraordinary. What do you want to say about the future of an organization like this? What are we looking forward to with, you can't tell me about product, I know.
Of course.
Yeah, but.
No, that's a very good question. I'm excited on, basically, I feel today we're in this AI forefront, and essentially we went from the snail mail to email. We're going to this type of, if not even greater, exponential turn. And what does this mean for creators? I think when we talk to students and everything, there's this always fear of like, oh, maybe this downsizes our capability. No, it actually makes you more of a creative director much sooner. You're not there doing the labor. You're allowing the computation to basically run that. You're curating the emotion around it, and you're essentially having a result out of it. So, for example, we've been using a process where we can have a sketch, plop it in 30 seconds, it turntables it and animates it.
Oh, cool.
And this is good because essentially before we even make the 3D data, we can validate the 3D data before we make the 3D data.
That's very cool.
And I like that because when we start doing, for example, like even we can ask AI, what does 2028 look like? It might not be accurate, but more accurate than maybe we would have thought.
Yeah, well, considering how many sources they're able to pull in from almost instantaneously. So thank you very much for your time. This was extremely educational. I know that you guys out there have learned something because I learned something and I never learn anything. But thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much.
Stay tuned for more with the Nissan Sentra.